Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I watch and discuss one movie worthy of the coveted Midnight Movie Showtime. We're happy you could join us for today's film, No One Will Save You. With the admission from several whistleblowers claiming the U.S. is officially, unofficially in possession of non-human vehicles and intelligence, the Grindhouse Institute thought there was no better time than the present to highlight a modern alien invasion film that is making waves across its limited theatrical and streaming run. When Bryn's quiet country home is visited by some unexpected guests, she will have to take some pointers from Kevin McAllister on how to deal with them. Will she get the better of her house guests? And how long should she wait for the cavalry to come save her? Caitlin Dever delivers a masterful performance in Brian Duffield's 2023 film, No One Will Save You. And since this was only released a couple of months ago, we wanted to give you a warning that, like all other episodes, we will be spoiling this movie right from the beginning. So if you haven't seen it, stop the show now, watch the movie, and come right back. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. Please enjoy.
How would you describe what you do there? You're like horror icon hosting. What would you call that?
So actually, like my actual job title there is I'm the film programmer for Be Kind Video. We had to figure this out when we did the Washington Post thing.
Oh right.
You had to invent a title?
Yeah, before then I was just sort of like scary guy, like horror guy. I don't know.
I got called that in high school a lot, and now I make a podcast about it.
Yeah, it's
look at me now.
Well, I mean, your high school self would be proud of you, I guess.
High school self would be like, what the hell's a podcast?
Yeah.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Brian, I'm at a loss for words. Usually I try to find a quote from a movie to start us off with, but there wasn't really any in here.
You have
Except
one
for maybe
option.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
You have one line option, or unless you want to try to do the aliens doing Today we're doing our midnight. We're doing our midnight movie, which is one movie. Usually it's something that's a little bit more recent. This being extremely recent, as in 2023. No One Will Save You. And with us to discuss this film is a very special guest, Jeremy. If you could please do the introduction.
Yes. So we have a very fun movie here, and I needed to bring on the person who very much insisted that I watch this movie. A writer, an editor, VHS drug dealer, film programmer, and, living, walking horror movie encyclopedia, Matt Landsman.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Horror master here, or like a master class. We could get a little lesson in horror from you.
Save that for John Carpenter. He's actually the horror master. But
sure.
Yeah, maybe master fan or master VHS horror guy.
I guess my first question when I ask that is, what era of horror is like your bread and butter, or what's your favorite?
It's 80s VHS classics, just like 80s slasher movies, stuff like Evil Dead 2 and Stuart Gordon movies and Chopping Mall and The Blob and Alligator, Ghoulies, The Gate, Monster Squad. I mean, I could go on and on, but that's like you get a pretty clear picture of a stack of spines of tapes as I'm saying that.
Brian Usna and Jeffrey Combs are going to do Reanimator, I believe, coming up soon. So that or discussing Stuart Gordon.
Reanimator.
The spirit of Stuart
Gordon. Yeah, exactly.
To promote the book, which Dark Delicacies is supplying our friends at Dark Delicacies. They're doing a screening of that at the Egyptian with Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs and Brian Usna next month.
That'd be awesome.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess in your little resume there, we've had Matthew Renoir on from Be Kind Video, and on that episode we referenced you as well as the other Matt. So this is the other Matt from Be Kind There's two
Well,
Matts there.
today he's the other Matt.
Oh, today.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
that's true.
That's a
true.
good point.
You're the Matt today from Be Kind, and he's the other Matt. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's whichever one of us isn't in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, who called me an asshole? Oh, that was the other Matt.
I haven't seen you in the same room together.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
you know what?
exactly.
It's kind of like the Mr. Big type of thing where we can sometimes get asked questions that we don't feel like answering and be like, oh, let me ask the other Matt.
Yeah. I thought you were referencing Wayne's World there with Mr. Big in the limo.
He's going across the country right now to look for new acts to sign to his label. Next stop is St. Louis, and he's going to come back through Chicago on his way to Detroit.
You know, for a security guard, he had an awful lot of information, don't you think?
Oh no, it's like the pseudonym for Dr. Kananga in Live and Let Die, Otto's character in James Bond.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's great.
There seems to be some mistake. My name is...
Names is for tombstones, baby. Y'all take this honky out and waste him, now!
But today we're talking No One Will Save You. So we're talking aliens, which is one of my favorite subjects. And I think we talked about this on the last episode, was that we were discussing, and I was hoping to discuss this right away, is this a horror movie or is this a sci-fi movie? And what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say that it skews towards horror because I was actually unnerved by this movie more than I have been by a lot of recent movies. I'd actually go so far as to say this is probably the scariest alien movie since Signs.
Felt like Signs a little bit. Signs meets Straw Dogs, maybe?
Wait, what? Oh, because of the farmhouse?
And the pots of water and the pots of boiling.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I was like, that's not usually what people think of with Straw Dogs, but I think you're right. That's a good call.
Yeah, not to mention that our protagonist definitely takes out these aliens pretty harshly.
Yeah. Well, and an alien entered her without her permission, so I guess
There
that
you go.
does make little Straw Dogs.
With a
There you
tribble,
go.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gee, the stress ball
Sort
tribble.
of
Yeah.
Gummy tribble, yeah. So no, I agree. I thought it was pretty horrific. What about you, Jeremy? Was this more on the sci-fi end, or yeah?
Yeah, I think I agree with Matt there. It's every alien moment in this. So like the first time we see the little tractor beam or whatever, it like snaps that guy's back in half, or like
Best tractor beam effect ever in a movie, right? Like that one.
Yeah.
This was by far the best.
totally. And almost every time until maybe toward the very end, you would see a gray or a person with the little in their neck.
The parasite. Yeah.
It was all done the way one would do it in a horror movie,
Right.
to horrific effect. And I don't know. Yeah, if that's the question, like which category would you put it in? I think it would go horror first and then sci-fi.
Because I thought the aliens themselves were quite monstrous when you think about that. At least from our definition.
giant
I mean,
Daddy
they had
Longlegs thing and
fingers for feet and toes.
Yeah.
Like they were walking on nothing but hands.
yeah,
Some of them did. There were like the different kind of
Yeah.
like variations.
Right.
There was kind of like the big spider-like one, and then I actually found the kind of like squat one with like the inward pointing arms, like kind of the most
Right.
unsettling. The one that she's just
Right.
kind of
yeah.
staring down in the hallway while it clicks at her.
It was the most aggressive too, right?
Oh, I thought that was the one in the basement. No.
Well, I think it goes up the stairs. And It's like
Okay.
the little one.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
little
yeah,
one with
yeah.
the big arm. It's almost like it's got the wider
Right.
arms for the body. It's scary.
Yeah.
The
But
proportions.
the thing did the giant spider like one creeped me out, and they do a really good job in this of just keeping the aliens in silhouette shadow shape, and they're just a shadow back there, but you see the full form of it, and it's like, what the hell is that? With the weird movement, and everything feels a little bit stop motiony. I know it's CG, but they did a good job of like, I don't know, removing the right amount of frames to just give it that otherworldly animation whenever it would do things. All the aliens,
Right, like it would like put up its finger and go like a
Yeah.
switchblade. It like moves too fast or something, or at an odd pace.
Yeah, it's like they're moving at a speed we can't comprehend with our own eyes. You know, they're just that
No.
fast. Or it's awesome.
Yeah, and it was fascinating because the way it starts off too, if you just go into it kind of blind like I did. I mean, I hadn't really heard of it Matt, you said to go watch it, so I went and found it and watched it.
I'm sitting in the video store where we're trying to get people to rent movies, and I'm basically yelling at everyone who comes in to watch this Hulu movie.
Stop.
And that's why I didn't hear about much of it either, or any marketing, because it was trapped behind Hulu. And I had to watch 2 ads because I'm not paying for the more expensive Hulu.
Well, shout out to the People's Republic of Beyond Fest for putting together a screening of this movie. I did not go to it, but simply the fact that they had a premiere of this movie at the Arrow is kind of what put it on my radar. And a lot of my, Beyond Fest friends who, occasionally take one for the team, they went and saw it and all came back saying it was awesome. And they told me it was an alien movie, and that's what made me want to watch it. And I was like, oh, well, why didn't you tell me it was an alien movie? Then I would have left my house for it.
I really wish I had been able to catch it in the theater as well. It is one of those things where it's like the stillness of it, the like little silent suspense moments, which is basically describing the whole movie, would have been very palpable in that room. And what's funny is when you started to say the People's Republic of what was it? What was it?
Beyond Fest.
Beyond Fest.
Put together a lot of incredible genre premieres in Los Angeles.
Right, and they kind of call themselves that, or they call their fans that, or something.
Yes.
But where I thought you were going with that was the People's Republic of China, which is where I got the DVD or the Blu-ray of this movie. So.
They put out like there's a bootleg of this?
It's not a bootleg. Apparently, it was released in China. Well, I don't know if it's a bootleg, but it seems as if it were released in China, and I got a Blu-ray for it, so you can watch it with no ads.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to watch that. It really took me out of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet. Jesus.
Some really good moments in this that did not need to turn into a commercial.
Yeah. You didn't need to be sold some Tide or Provlasic, or what was the fake drug in the Fugitive I was trying to make a reference to.
You sold Provasic. Is that what it is?
Something like that.
He falsified his research so that our DU-90 could be approved, and Devlin McGregor could give you Provasic.
Oh, God.
I think we need to mention that the big draw of this movie is that no one speaks in it, right? Well,
basically.
There's a line. But there is really, the majority of the film is silence, and it's a really well sound designed film. And I think that that's pretty ballsy for this kind of an audience watching movies to do something like that, but it's extremely successful.
Well, I think one thing that really struck me about that choice, and why I really was on board with that choice, is because it didn't feel like a gimmick in the sense that like the character couldn't speak. It's just that...
Was that a reference to Silent Night? The John Woo Silent Night? Yeah.
Yes, which I thought was terrible, in my opinion. But anyway, it's not that the character could not speak. It was that they made sort of like the stylistic choice not to, and part of why they did that, I would have to guess, is to emphasize sort of the distance between her and the rest of normal society. Yeah.
You're exactly right, and I think thematically that they made it work a lot better because of that. It like shows her isolation. Her cut off of communication extends to how she doesn't even talk to herself or say damn it when she stubs her toe, or can't turn on the light. And it has this very strange, maybe hypnotic effect on the audience where you get sucked into this other way of viewing what's happening. But I think you're right about the gimmick thing, because it really needed to have somebody be completely isolated the way this person was. So our main character, Bryn, is living out in this farmhouse in, like, I don't know, a lake cottage like little town in Ohio. And she's kind of a pariah in town. She doesn't talk to anybody.
We're only teased as to why, right? Like we just get little hints from the townspeople. One of them actually spits on her, and you're like, oh, so she really fucked up somewhere. But it's pretty vicious what happened.
Right, but it's like, she's so alone and so cut off from everything. It wasn't like you're saying the 2023 John Woo Silent Night, where they had the character lose his vocal cords or whatever, and that was the reason he didn't talk. But the problem was he was always surrounded by people, And those people seemed like they would have said something. It became a thing where it was like, wait, why aren't they talking? But in this one, there was a couple moments where they came close to seem like they're going to talk. Like, she's going to go report this dead alien to the cops or whatever. And, gets in there and gets confronted. And it's a silent confrontation, which is just being spit on, like you're saying. And then it was, well, there's nothing else to say here, so I guess we'll move on to the next scene.
It worked.
Yeah.
It made it feel like that's something that could have happened.
It was an impressive level of restraint. It didn't feel like, like Lars von Trier's like 5 obstructions or something, where they placed some kind of very specific kind of arbitrary limitation on her ability to speak. It felt like this, really thoughtful choice for the movie that I didn't find annoying or distracting.
Yeah, I guess I will have to admit that there were a couple moments where I felt like it felt unnatural not to just say something even to yourself. But I do appreciate it in hindsight because it puts you under this spell of not speaking. Like, there's plenty of sound and there's tons of great sound design. There's lots of diegetic sound, her breathing and her screeching and all the little sounds you hear of her picking up objects and whatever else. The sounds of the aliens clicking and screeching and all these different things. The blahs and whatever of like the ships or whatever. But it puts you in this very strange mindset, so that when it breaks, toward the end there, and she actually does say something, it has this huge impact on you that
it's the Silent Bob effect, right? Like all of a sudden Silent Bob says something super insightful at the end of the movie, right?
Yeah, and you can kind of feel that coming. Like when you know that she's not like a mute, you're kind of just like waiting for like, what's her one word gonna be?
Yeah.
It's a good one too. It's really poignant, and I think that they did a nice job of that, and also setting up exactly what did happen. An accident with her friend Maud, and she just wanted to apologize, right? She wanted that moment because she accidentally killed this girl, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of depression with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, the whole town is punishing her. She's punishing herself, and the aliens sort of act as some sort of therapy for her.
Right, exactly. That's really, really fun. I don't know if we spoil this stuff, right? We could talk about that.
I think so. I think if you're going to go ahead and listen to this episode, why don't you watch the movie first? There's a Chinese Blu-ray if you don't want the ads, or there's it's on Hulu. Okay, now come back.
Yeah, and we're back.
I feel like it's impossible to talk about this movie without talking about the meaning of the ending, and maybe you guys weren't ready to get right into that, so I'll leave it to you.
Wherever we want to go, but I think actually let's do back up a little bit. It was
I wanted to say one thing.
Go ahead.
You compared it to Signs, and I also thought it felt very Signs. Obviously, the aliens themselves, the location, etc. I also felt like this movie kind of felt a little bit like what I wanted Super 8 to be. Do you remember that J.J. Abrams film?
Yes. Yes.
Which was, supposed to be this homage to Spielberg and Richard Donner and 80s kids, young kids films with the aliens, etc. I don't know. I didn't like the alien in that, and I was just taken aback because it was a little bit too big for what I wanted out of that. This was more contained, and I'd say that this is more of the Spielberg or Jaws even throwback, along with Close Encounters and other stuff, E.T., that more of a Spielberg throwback than anything.
Yeah, it was a little horror, Amblin, a little bit Signs, a little bit Fire in the Sky, which is another one of the great
it kind of drew from a lot of those, right? Like a ton of the things that we've seen in other films, and obviously the familiar too. The saucers are so classic, and all that. So, and the grays are obviously kind of the general.
A little like
new
with a little bit of a new stamp on it. Like,
yeah,
and that's where I was kind of building to earlier when I don't think I finished my thought or got distracted, or I distracted myself perhaps. But I think when you recommended it to me, I didn't know anything about it. I just watched it, and like all of a sudden I was like, wait, I was assuming, okay, it's Matt, it must be horror. But I didn't know anything about it, and then I started watching it, and it's like you hear trash cans get knocked over in the middle of the night, and then she walks downstairs, and there's something happening down there, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not human, right? And it's making these weird noises. And it is kind of interesting going into it completely fresh or whatever, and not hearing about it and not knowing what it was. But it was interesting that like the aliens themselves and the saucers, whatever, they were all very, very much in our collective imagination already.
Yeah.
It wasn't, aliens, like you've never seen them before. It's like, well, you've seen these quite a bit. And, the saucers themselves are very classically
But they also, the design also drew on the fact that, we've got the classic alien with the big black eyes and the gray head, giant head, with the skinny arms and all that. But then all of a sudden they're like, drawing on other things like the giant spider version and that small one and all these different things that they do. It just kept giving you a little bit more of their anatomy or their collective anatomy, I would say, because they couldn't all look exactly the same, right? Like we're all varied in our sizes and statures and stuff. So, all of a sudden, if another alien group came down, they'd probably have a bunch of different versions. So this actually showed that. They don't usually do that in movies. It's usually like all the same uniformed creature. This is like they had different versions, but they all looked similar. And I couldn't figure out if she was fighting the same one and it was just kind of growing into different pieces. And at some points they were doing these weird things where they were doing like different symbols with their arms and shit. And I'm like, are they like praying to her?
They're doing
like,
semaphore, like they're like telling ships where to go.
Yeah, that's what they were doing, right? They were like communicating with the ships. It's so so awesome.
The sort of like Pokemon evolution almost of the different alien forms.
Yes.
I think kind of speaks nicely to the pacing of the movie and the sense of escalation in the movie because,
very good.
As Jeremy was saying, you don't necessarily know what this is when you're going into it. The title doesn't heavily imply aliens, but it throws you right into it. I think that the alien first shows up around like the 12 to 15 minute mark.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of exposition in the beginning. We kind of learn a little bit more about the character's backstory as we go. So it's very surprising how quickly it throws you into that alien element and then how quickly she's able to dispatch the first one. So it's like, where do we go from that? How do we escalate this? And it's almost like they're introducing new aliens with act breaks.
I totally agree. It's like a kind of anthological, almost like here's the next alien she needs to fight, or here's level 2, here's the next boss. It's like a bigger version or the smaller one with she's got to fight it in a different way. It was really excellent how they broke that stuff up.
Yeah. And it's also just, as a text to sort of like read into a little bit, it was one of the things, okay, that there's these different subspecies of the gray aliens. So it's like the very first one is the pot smoking gray that we've all seen a million times, and then
the blacklight poster you mean I have behind me here? No.
That one, and then the there's the one that Matt was terrified by with it's kind of like shorter legs but really long arms. And then there's the, daddy long legs, kind of spidery looking one that was very tall because its arms and legs were so long. And then there's the phalange, triple parasite monster that was controlling the humans.
Yeah.
And with the tractor beam that we see later, also was able to use that to 3D print a version of her.
Clone her
or whatever. And
is that what you think happened?
And I was wondering through the middle of it, and I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts. Like, is the stress ball phalange thing the actual like alien that's in charge here? And there's all these different subspecies because they went and grabbed them from all these different places and they're controlling them.
Well, I had not considered that maybe, it's the sort of like little anemone type things that are actually the puppeteers of the whole operation. Right. That's definitely a interesting way to look at it. And that could be the case, though. I don't know if do we see one come out? We do see one come out of like a gray's mouth, right? Yeah. And like try to go
like a hairball.
There's like two. I mean, like one we see the little trail, and we don't know what happened to it.
It comes out of the human's mouth, though, right? Like it was blood out of the... Oh, no, you're right. I'm sorry. It was out of the alien. Yeah.
Out of the first alien that she accidentally stabbed with the church bell, when she kind of comes back to the house, she sees the trail and she sees the, like, gross stuff out of the mouth. And then later, when she's stuck in the red beam, it kind
comes
of like...
out of the one...
Comes
right
out
at
of
the
one.
screen, too.
Yeah.
That's the one where you want a 3D movie,
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah.
send that tribble right at my face.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it goes into her mouth, and then it's a cut that we don't quite understand, and she's got
it's
it
awesome.
out somehow. It gets sucked into the tractor beam, gets pulled about halfway up to the ship,
Becomes her.
and then it starts printing a circulatory system, and then printing her. But I have a slightly different theory on that, and then all of this. But let's finish with this theory.
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen a Frank Henenlotter movie called Brain Damage, where there's this little creature named Elmer that kind of lives in the back of this guy's head, basically, and
Sounds just like Basket Case, yeah.
starts making him do evil things.
Henenlotter.
Yeah, of course, it's like pure Henenlotter, but and it's a VHS classic, but it's just like one of those things where it's like I do think that's a really interesting way that they did it, where like the parasites are potentially either the real aliens / like one's in charge, or that's just like what's inside them that like comes out and like it makes it harder to kill them or something. Or maybe it is the same, parasite that keeps like upgrading to like better like biological mech suits while it's like trying to torment her.
I think biological mech suits is where I was going with this, was that the actual aliens that we're seeing, the humanoids, are drones, right? They're just kind of vehicles that you can jump into, and it's similar to the little guy in Men in Black, right? That's in the guy's head that's controlling the joysticks, right? It's kind of this, small anemone type creature, and that might be the mastermind it might not just be this race of aliens either that it's controlling. It might be a bunch of them, but it's like using these like drone looking, because the aliens are looking, they don't have much emotion right until the very end, and all of a sudden we see that they might actually have a heart, and it's like almost like for the longest time I'm like, oh, they're drones, they're vehicles, and then by the end that theory goes out the door, because they kind of give in and feel Bryn's pain, I guess, and kind of give her this ideal life. And again, I jump to the end. I keep wanting to jump to the end, guys. God damn it. But I thought that the anemone was the bigger alien for a while, but then I'm like, this doesn't work. I mean, it just might be the same thing. It might be part of them, part of their anatomy.
Yeah. And then I guess the other thing that like is a little different is when we're in the mothership there, they have a conversation among themselves and then look up to the, giant butthole in the sky, and that thing talks to them. Yeah. and so that thing, the queen bee or whatever, up there is perhaps something even, another species or whatever, or another structure.
That's what I took from all that. It just keeps getting bigger, right? It's the Russian dolls type thing where, somebody's in charge of somebody in charge of somebody.
Right.
The etymology of it almost kind of reminded me of like, xenomorphs, like from Alien, where you have like the face hugger into the chest burster and these different life cycles.
It must have laid something inside his throat, some sort of embryo. He started...
Look, man, I only need to know one thing. Where they are.
Are you finished?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm all about that. I think that they took a lot from Alien. I think they took a lot from even like B movies from the 50s. A lot of the sound effects and things. So I think that this is an homage to all the Alien films and kind of home invasion horror films, actually, too. They did a good job of mixing the both.
Yeah, and making it kind of feel a little bit timeless. Like I wanted to touch on like Bryn's aesthetic.
Yeah,
is so.
That's literally where I was just about to go. So keep going.
When was she?
She's kind of anachronistic. She's like this little like hipster in a way that builds her sort of a Christmas village in her spare time. And when you see her life on the farm, it's so like self-contained that, like you said, it's like, when is she? It takes you a while to even realize she's like a part of modern day society.
Because they give you a year, don't they, in writing right off the bat of the film? Isn't there?
It's
like
pretty early on.
She wrote. Yeah,
you see that her mom died in 2019.
That's what it is.
So this is like after that.
Yes, tombstone.
But totally, like the way she has kind of her Depression era, a print dress, and it's that 1800s style farmhouse, and the little craft Beetlejuice style like modeled town that she has there.
Winter Rivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it all just exists to sort of like emphasize the difference between her and everyone else in her world, and sort of
Yeah.
really make the ending hit home.
Yeah. And and then also, actually, before we get to that, so she's got this model town, and that as a hobby feels a little old fashioned, to begin with. But then she puts
Very
on
Beetlejuice.
this like yeah, this like 50s song, and puts out the sort of Arthur Murray dance steps on the floor.
Right, the 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Yeah, exactly.
And so that felt out of time as well.
Yeah.
But it somehow doesn't feel like they've made a mistake or I don't know what, that they've made a choice that doesn't work.
Production design choice or something.
Right.
Or wardrobe.
It fully works thematically, especially because well, first of all, like the model houses, something she used to do with her mom. But it's also that it's a hobby one can do in isolation, the way she was. After having been a pariah for, as she says, 10 years, I think, because like when she was writing one of her notes, she was like, it's been 10 years since you died, and presumably everyone's hated her the whole time since then. But it's interesting because this out of time idea kind of fits in with the whole aesthetic of the Greys and the sort of like very circular flying saucers, the tractor beams. It all kind of fits in that late 40s, early 50s time frame, look and feel. And for me, this kind of gets into sort of this other interesting layer to the film, which is, so she's constructed this model replica of the town or whatever, and again, very much like Beetlejuice, where we see at one point, it's like the I can't remember the name of the town. It was like
Winter Rivers,
Mill Valley or whatever, or Winter River, or whatever the name of the town was. We see a close up of the model, and on the model it has the name of the town, post office or something, or the name of the town library. So it's Mill Valley Library, or Winter Post Library. And so it's clearly the town that she lives in that she was kind of recreating in this thing. And because the movie is so focused on her psychology, the sort of psychological reading of what's happening here is like, perhaps that all of this stuff is sort of informing this idea that's going on in her head, including some of this stuff with the aliens, right? Which is why we're left at the very end, perhaps in this mind palace of acceptance. And this is almost a personified version of her coming to terms with what she's done.
And living in this idyllic world in her head, you mean? Not given to her by the aliens, like none of this happened, and this is all...
Well, as in, like, the aliens are like a personification of the sort of pain and
guilt,
like the breakthrough that she would have to sort of forgive herself. And including to the point where the alien 3D prints her, and she has a symbolic death of the self when she kills her alien doppelganger.
Yeah, I think that one interpretation of the ending that I really like is the notion that they tried to replace her, and then they basically realized that she's such an outsider already, and she is so at odds with her world as it is, which her clothing and her lifestyle really exacerbate throughout the movie, that she's not really a threat to them. She's fine with them replacing everyone around her because she can just kind of like coexist with them. And finally, this other presence that's replaced all the humans around her accepts her.
Right.
And
I think you nailed it on the head.
I mean, that is what I think is happening at the end. But I think that another layer to it might be that she rejected the parasite in this way, that they realized they couldn't control her, and they were just like, all right, whatever.
Just if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of got that feeling from it too. They're just like, okay, so she's this damaged. No one in the town likes her. The only thing she wants to do is stick around here. You know, she's in this house, and why is she in this house? Okay, let's go into her brain. They go in, they do the whole black box theater thing and get the whole lowdown on what happened to Maud. And we see the whole background, and they're like, okay, this is fine. This is going to be the worst thing that we're going to do to her is just put her back in the town where she's not going to harm anybody, not going to harm herself, and she's actually going to have a pretty decent life with a bunch of her friends and neighbors waving at her now all of a sudden. A totally new experience for her, and she's now all of a sudden in this like ideal world. Now it felt a little dreamy to me at the end.
It's like Pleasantville or like, you know, Leave It to Beaver or something, yeah.
It felt like exactly like how they were like a sitcom from the 50s.
Maple Street. What's that?
The monsters are due on Maple Street.
The
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, exactly. So it felt like the aliens, had kind of put her in the glass bubble town or whatever that they were looking over her.
The aquarium, yeah.
Yeah, the aquarium, the zoo. But it still wasn't a total bad ending for her, right? She was still in a pretty good place at the end, which I thought was interesting, and that's kind of why I thought that the aliens did have some
for
sort
her.
of...
It's much better than the world she was living in. Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. Like by the end of the movie, though, the one thing that I wanted to ask you guys was, we know what happened to Bryn, but then we see all the saucers around all the places outside of the town, right? Even bigger and probably across the whole globe. So now, did they just take over the entire world, and was she the only one that was allowed to just kind of live in this drone version of humanity, or was this, was she the last one on Earth basically to be a human, and did this happen everywhere? I was like, how big did this actually go? It's
probably a world of people who are so introverted that they feel like aliens, that they blend right in with aliens, and they wouldn't even know how to spot the other non-aliens.
So Earth, how we are now today on this planet. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. It feels like a much better rendered version of the entire movie as an extended metaphor for sort of depression and mental illness. Annihilation is the one I'm thinking of, where it's sort of aliens and this and that, like kind of Lovecraftian style creatures are this representation. And this movie has that quality where it feels like this extended metaphor, but does the metaphor, like, weaves it in better with the story to the point where, like, you could totally miss it and enjoy the story as it is. To me, part of the thing that helps tip that over into that this is a process that's internal to her is the way that, she breaks the fourth wall at the very end and kind of like smiles at the camera. And not only that, but she's doing the like, if you ever
the dance,
she did the dance, and she does a kind of solo dance, but then does the thing that happens when they sort of film musical theater, which is like, okay, everyone at the end of the cue, you strike your pose and you hold it, but because you're exerting yourself so much, you're breathing really heavily, and she's kind of doing that motion, and because obviously there's something that feels very unreal about it, or kind of breaks the spell of the rest of the movie in that moment. So it's like, okay, well, why are we pointing so hard at that? And to me, it feels like it's emphasizing how this whole process has sort of changed her, and you can see it in the way that she not only interacts with everybody else. Okay, is that because they've all become puppeteered anemone, drones, or is that because she was able to change something in herself as well, and it was sort of an acknowledgement that that she got there through all this other sort of pain and therapy, and like killing that part of herself that was torturing her so much, and the aliens were sort of this catalyst to allow her to do it. But because she lives in this constructed space where everything feels out of time, the aliens, the perception, the sort of like sock hop that they have at the end there, all feel like it belongs in another era, when we're given these clear markers that this is taking place in 2022.
Well, I think it was either like this breath of sort of freedom at the end, where she's finally allowed to just kind of be herself and do her thing and can't be afraid of going into town anymore. But I think it could also, the way she takes that breath at the end, be interpreted a bit as like it's like the ending of a performance, like you said. It's
Mhm.
like on stage where now we're kind of realizing that she's kind of having to perform for these aliens at all
Oh, that's
times. And
interesting.
I
Yeah.
I actually think that there's an alternate read of the
Sure.
ending where she's kind of just blending in. And maybe for whatever reason, I mean, this is less plausible, but maybe there's a world where they don't know that she
Hmm.
isn't one of them, but she's able to function as if
Right.
she is, and she's
Yeah.
just sort of trapped in needing to grimace and pretend like she's having a blast.
That's interesting.
The
Well,
torturous ending.
the thing
Yeah.
is that they are definitely playing the song that she loves, and it's they've embraced her aesthetic as opposed to maybe the rest of the town, and their sort of more modern aesthetics. But I do like that the sort of like I have no mouth and must scream style ending that you're thinking of there, Matt.
Well, there's also another read on the ending that it's sort of like the happiness vision at the end is the vision that the anemone is putting into her head, and maybe
Right.
she has been replaced.
Right.
Kind of like the Matrix, right? Like she might be,
Yeah.
locked in a battery somewhere.
Yeah, the she's eating the steak.
Yeah. No, or what was the Tony Shalhoub episode of the X-Files where like we come out of his head and he's like almost lobotomized, but he has this like single tear to let us know that he can't escape the mental prison he's in.
Yeah, and that trope is repeated throughout, like Black Mirror, like San Junipero and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because and like speaking of X-Files, this one struck me, as in the X-File vein, where it's like the they did such a great job of taking things that you're very familiar with. Okay, the kitchen and the electronics or whatever that come to life, just like when the aliens come to get Barry and Close Encounters, and it's the grays, there's tractor beams, there's all this stuff that you're very familiar with, but it still feels like super fresh. And a lot of that comes from like how well they did some of the gags, where it's like all those beams of light that seemingly, the light wouldn't be bending that way, if it was coming straight down. But somehow it comes, north and south.
Well,
as
it was like light sometimes without the pillar of light. It was just the pool at the bottom, and it was almost like this like blob that could go in the house at sometimes. You're just like, how the hell is that going in there? But it's alien shit.
It's alien shit. But it's like but because of that, like the and it's slightly not explained, but like the rules, like what happens when that happens, when that beam comes through, is illustrated very clearly, and like she has the pot and it like gets smashed to the wall, and like nothing can break that beam or whatever, and so you know what those rules are, and so that each little set piece kind of like builds upon those moments where it's like, okay, there's something new and surprising. Oh, they all have this sort of like telekinesis thing, and that's hard to combat, and Or some of them do, and some of them don't. Maybe the Daddy Longlegs did not seem to have that, which is why it had to chase after her and get caught up in the car and all this.
Look like Pennywise, right? Like the big spider.
Yeah, the spider.
Yeah, and that thing was kind of annoying me because it was like roaring for seemingly no reason. But now that I'm thinking about it, like maybe that one was supposed to be more animal-like, like it was like an attack dog, versus the other ones that have the telekinesis that don't have to make these noises. They don't have to make the roar noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe there's like different like troop sort of designations,
Sure,
like recon one in the beginning, and then like more of like a assassin type one that she encounters next, or something like that, or an infiltration unit, and then, you have like this like full on sort of like tank in the form of the spider one. Maybe it's something like that, but maybe the reason that they chose like the grays, the typical head shape, and they you were talking about like the saucers and the sort of beam of light and those like alien tropes that really like speak to that like 50s Roswell sort of conception. Maybe the reason that she's able to sort of coexist with them so well at the end is because the last time they surveilled the planet was the
Yeah.
50s, and they see her and they're like, oh, we get it. And
Yeah.
everyone
Love
else is
that.
like this.
That's awesome.
Everyone else is like this hostile new world.
You're
That's
and
really
you're thinking
smart,
for
yeah.
yourself, I'm really hoping the last time they visited was the 80s so they'd get along with me.
Hey, do you guys know Friday the 13th?
Yeah. Have you seen Maniac and Sleepaway Camp? Oh, God.
So what did you said you saw this in a theater, Jeremy? Matt, did you see
So-
this on?
I know. I was saying I
No,
wish
he
I
saw
it in the
this
theater.
on
Yeah.
a Chinese bootleg.
That's right. Matt, you did not either, or you did see this?
No, I saw this with my paid Hulu subscription.
Wow.
No commercials. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm paying. I'm just not paying the
Yeah, not
$30
paying enough.
or
Yeah.
whatever a month. Yeah.
Well, let's be real. I probably saw it on somebody else's. But,
Yeah.
Somebody paid for it. But,
We'll edit that out.
but no, I could have gone to see it in the theaters, and I think that one thing that I wanted to point out that I really like about this movie, obviously we love it when a new movie is shot on film, something like Oppenheimer or something like that. But if you're gonna do these like digital streaming movies, I love it when they have that like extremely slick technical precision where it just feels like everything is mixed and mastered perfectly, and the color and everything is like really well adjusted. And I got that vibe from this and from David Fincher's The Killer as well, where you just feel like you're watching somebody that really knows the ins and outs of like digital filmmaking. And I did appreciate that aesthetic in this movie.
Yeah, like all the, I don't know what, drone shots and the really, really, I did touch on this just slightly, but I think it's worth chatting about a little more. Like the really, really intense sound design in this, where just like in all these different places, like where right after she kills the alien, she kind of dashes off across the other side of the room and is like hyperventilating, and it's like the music's building, and then jump cut, and she's sitting in the same spot but like looking dead, like she stayed up all night and she's just completely exhausted. And then she kind of like slowly blinks, and it's like, okay, what am I gonna do? And then regroups and figures herself out. But like the sound like built, and in that jump cut it just like cuts to silence. And it would do things like that all the time in this, where it's just there'd be diegetic stuff that was really intense, and then there'd be score like that would be just extremely punchy.
But you could never tell which is which. And all of a sudden,
right.
like the ship, like one of the saucers would come up, and it had like this old 50s thing, straight out of Mars Attacks.
Yeah.
And then, but then all of a sudden, it would kind of like lead right into the score. Like it was just mixed so perfectly, like you didn't know if it was I hearing music, or was that like some sort of alien craft, the engine or something.
Right.
So interesting. I did want to bring up the sound design, and one of those things, and it gave me I jumped out of my chair, was she's being hunted, and I think this is alien number 2 that comes to hunt her. And she's underneath a table, and behind her something falls, and it's kind of a jump scare when that thing falls, and it cuts to that scene to see her vision as to what we see fall, which is like a rag or like a broom or something. And then we cut to the other shot of her, and the alien's just sitting there looking at her like squatted down on the ground and just kind of like giving her one of those. Man, shit my pants.
It looked like Michael Myers after hitting that guy to the wall, and like head
give her
cocking.
the head thing.
Yeah,
and that's when it started doing those little like hand motions and moving her around the room, and like
it's
all
like
the
a little
telekinesis.
too fast. Yeah,
Man. Really
I feel like one thing we haven't even discussed yet that is such a big part of this movie is how good Caitlin Dever is in this movie.
Yeah, that's a lot of acting there. Yeah,
I mean, she carries the entire thing, and this is an up and coming. It was just announced she's going to be a lead in the next season of The Last of Us. She was great in Booksmart. This is an up and coming young actor. I think it takes a lot of chops to take on this silent role where you just have to be terrified convincingly, and it's a physical performance too.
Yeah, I was gonna say that she did seem like she did a lot of her own stunts and action too. Like that was part of it, and I'm sure this was heavy on that.
I think it's the good point though about how impressive it is, also because of her age and her abilities. Because, that's one of those things where it's like, younger actors or whatever tend to be very, very focused on, getting all the line readings down and having that happen. And then the time where they're waiting for the next line to happen, they're
bullshit, my line.
It's bullshit, my line.
Yeah.
And so there's not giving you anything.
Yeah.
And this one would be very difficult if you weren't given anything while you weren't talking. And she really, really killed it on that score.
Well, and there's so many like silent, more silent performances, like 11 in Stranger Things, where it's like, she acts like mean or like brooding or like, I think it may be like almost easier to play something like that than like act scared. Like every horror movie filmmaker probably, is like act scared. There's an alien there. There's a CG alien there. But to play it convincingly, and,
right.
You have to imagine she's acting opposite like a metal ball or something. Like
right.
it's
or nothing.
I thought like there was a lot of depth in this performance.
And for once, I actually enjoyed some CG aliens in a horror movie. I was actually really impressed with them in this one.
Yeah.
I still wish we could have got a little bit more practical out of it, but I thought they did a good job, and some of the things that they did, I don't think you could have done practically, but still pretty good.
Yeah, I could have gone for, I don't know what, like 60% more practical. I mean, obviously there's some stuff you're not going to be able to pull off.
Yeah.
But it would be fascinating to see what they would do with the limitations, and then maybe some sweetening, as they call it.
Right, yeah. And play with the timing and things.
Well, it's funny because it's a over $20 million movie that went to streaming, and even 20 years ago, so much of that might have been more practical. Maybe 25 years ago, they would have done, like something with like Stan Winston Studios or like K&B or something, where they're doing more stuff in camera, especially with like that kind of budget. There's no reason they really couldn't have. It's just kind of sadly the way things are done now.
Right.
Yeah.
Sadly is the key word there. But I do think that they were good. I thought that they, felt real. I thought that they did do some, maybe 20% was practical. Like sometimes when the arm would come into frame and she would bite the arm of the alien. I think she was actually biting a rubber arm or something. But other than that, I mean, they felt like they had weight to them, which sometimes CG, I just feel like they throw physics right out the door, and you're like, that thing is basically floating there or moving at a different frame rate than everything around it, and I'm not sold on it, But these, they were on a different frame rate in a way, but it worked for the lore, They looked like they were just kind of just strange the way they moved.
Yeah, I mean, on a scale of like Scorpion King to Gollum, it was like maybe like an 8 out of 10 or something.
It's definitely more towards the Gollum. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't even know if Gollum. I don't even know if Gollum's like the gold standard anymore. I mean, he was 20 years ago.
Maybe
Avatar,
the Planet of the Apes films.
Yeah. And Planet of the Apes, there you go.
Yeah, those are really good. But yeah, I mean, I think that Gollum that's a pretty fun scale to go by, actually, when I think about it. From Scorpion King to Gollum.
Scorpion King, or something from the Power Rangers movie, or Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or the like some of the shit in Escape from L.A. is like the
CG's
bottom
really
of the barrel.
Really bad, yeah. That helicopter that comes in at the end that kind of transforms itself. It looks so bad.
Oh, I love when they're like the sub is like coming into LA and passing like the submerged Universal Studios. It looks like N64 graphics.
I give you the death of Snake Plissken!
If someone by some miracle listens to this who works in...
You can just stop the sentence right there. If someone listens to it.
If someone listens to this who somehow works in like distributing movies or something, like give this a physical release, support physical media. Yeah, don't make us buy it from the People's Republic of China.
I mean, I did that, but yes,
I'd love a 4K steelbook of this. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I'll second that motion, and the motion is carried. We will demand the People's Republic stamp out more of these things, that we can buy at Best Buy or wherever we buy DVDs these days.
Best Buy is taking them out officially. Walmart is going to be the one.
Walmart is also?
No, Walmart is going to carry the torch for physical releases.
Yay.
But you know what? If enough people like talk about how much they like this movie, if this movie does like sort of develop like a cult following or is a big success on streaming, we have seen that Hulu will put out discs like Prey, the Predator
Prey
movie.
did, yeah, exactly.
That's a good movie too. I like that one.
Yeah, I no,
that's fun.
That's true. Let's start that change.org petition right now.
Agreed.
And get No One Will Save You on some physical media.
Let's save it. No One Will Save You.
Yeah, and we'll have to petition the New Bev to for someone to first of all strike a 35mm print and then petition the New Bev to screen it. They have it be the midnight movie every couple weeks.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, I'd love to see it in a theater someday. I regret
100%.
not going to the one opportunity that I had, and I wish that it got some kind of like, at least like some semi-limited type of deal like The Killer did.
Yeah, right. The Killer played for a week or two.
Yeah.
Oh, that was one thing I was going to say was like, because unfortunately everyone has to watch this at home, and hopefully you have your mom's login or your ex-boyfriend's login that will allow you to watch it without ads, or you can go buy the Chinese DVD, Blu-ray, I mean. And in that case, the thing is you're still going to be watching it at home, but the one thing I wanted to say about that was that you need to watch it when it's extremely dark.
Remove all glare, yeah.
The very first set piece is very, very dark. And the very first time I tried watching it, I was like, oh, I need to stop this and watch it later tonight. Because
it was 11 a.m.
I was like, what's happening? It's like, I hear noises, but I can't see anything. So there's my PSA at the very end of this after we spoiled the shit out of it.
I mean, if you watch this movie like I did and like by yourself with the lights off, like kind of late at night, I think I put it on at like 11 or something, like you'll be unnerved, particularly by that first 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good
really
point
well
as well.
done.
Like, we started off talking about how much it was a horror movie, and then kind of got into all of the very interesting
sci-fi
readings, sci-fi stuff, and then the readings of the sort of psychological stuff that's happening with the character. But I think you're right to point that out, Matt, that like the biggest thing you're probably going to take away as a feeling from this movie is how unnerving and how, if you're home alone, all of a sudden that creak you just heard, what the hell was that? Am I getting invaded by grays that are going through my trash cans? Yeah. What was that on the roof? Was that a squirrel or was that a gray?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for me, my apartment is too small for anything to hide.
Yeah. Well, that's when the small alien comes in with the long arms, and it's crouching down, and it gets up on its little
bed. Yeah.
Knuckle toes or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, thanks so much for joining. Do you have anything you'd like to plug before the end of the show?
Sure. So you can find me at Matt's Mortuary on Instagram, where I'm always talking about VHS tapes and horror movies. And you can find many of those VHS tapes to purchase in store at Be Kind Video in Burbank, California, which has been my home base for over a year now, and where I also do a lot of programming and really fun screenings. And there's a few that we have on the horizon that are really fun of the horror variety. I can't speak of yet because they could always fall through. It's not official until I start selling tickets. But
but the idea is like with that screening, you usually have someone who made the movie to come in and chat about it with you guys.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of director Q&As in that space with Joe Dante and Tom Holland and John Harrison, and even some actor Q&As like Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp and Ernie Reyes Jr. from Surf Ninjas of all things, which is a VHS classic. So we're really
Fred Decker, I think you had at one point too.
Yeah,
right?
Fred Decker from we did Night at the Creeps, and Mick Garris, of course, who's, a hero of podcasting and horror and all that stuff. So, yeah, come and see us at the video store. And there's a lot of fun screenings and news about other things to come.
Awesome.
That was the best plug we've ever had on the show, by the way. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
All right, next up on the show, we'll be taking a look at 90s spy films, looking at Sneakers, Mission Impossible, and Ronin.
This one will be pretty exciting. It's some movies that fall in between the sort of fall of the Soviet Union and 9/11. And we will be looking at spy agencies and their depictions in popular culture during that time. And it's like, well, who's our enemy? What are we doing? What are we fighting for? What's the deal here? And we should be having a very fun guest joining us as well. And that is one to look forward to.
All right, thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao. Do 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 do.